Sekeres and Price for Tuesday, December 23rd, 2025, a presentation of Bet365. We're coming to you from the Pacific Toyota Dealer Studio here at the historic Wall Center. Visit shoptoyota.ca or visit your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. Matt Sekeres alongside guest co-host Jeff Paterson of Rinkwide, Vancouver, our Canucks reporter, Mike Rogerson and all his Junos hitting switches and conducting things on our final show before the Christmas break. Merry Christmas, Jeff.
That's you under that hat?
That is me under that hat. Yeah,
Merry
once a
Christmas
year.
back at you.
When I started in the broadcast business, an old wise veteran came up to me and said, "Kid, I just think you need to understand that there are some times in this business where you're going to have to wear the big red wig, the big red nose, the big red oversized shoes."
Done.
And so here you have it.
Mm-hmm. Very festive.
Yes.
Far more festive than me.
You got a little red on, Jeff, but you don't normally miss these much. You're a big holiday guy. You're a big calendar guy.
Yeah. I was told by my family the other day that I'm lacking in the wardrobe department when it comes to festive holiday cheer.
Well,
so
maybe
put it on the list. Right?
If you were a good boy, if you were nice this year, maybe Santa has something for you under the tree, Jeff.
Yeah, I know in my family, they'll wait till Boxing Day and get it half price. But
we do December 27th. It makes the gift giving a lot more economical. Well, speaking of nice and holiday cheer, our buddy Piero Mineta stopped by with some holiday cheer this week. Now, you may not know the name Piero Mineta, but I assure you, you know the face of Piero Mineta. If you watch Canucks games on television, for those of you on visual platforms, there he is. 20-plus years sitting behind the visitors' bench at Rogers Arena. Blake and I joined Piero for a game a couple of years back. He brought cannolis. He did not leave the gun. So thank you and Merry Christmas to Piero, the Minetas, and all the Sekeres and Price audience members, whether you watch on YouTube, X, whether you listen on pod, or however you catch the show.
And you were able to wrestle the box of cannolis away from Mike.
Yeah, well, it was tough. I told him we need it for a prop. Show comes first.
Give him back.
Yeah, going right back to the producer's booth here after the show. Daily poll questions. Start with that. When you hear Patrick Alvin say, quote, retool it a little bit with a hybrid form, what is your reaction? You can vote like, you can vote dislike, you can vote want to puke, or you can vote don't understand. Do so at the Sekeres and Price X and YouTube channels. And if this is all new to you, if you're not an Amazon Prime subscriber, you did not catch his interview last night between periods at the game in Philadelphia, or you didn't catch the clip somewhere on social media this morning, the Canucks general manager, he guests a lot on Amazon.
He does.
And, he was asked to talk about the Canucks and where they go from here after the Quinn Hughes trade. Here's Alvin.
And we felt that the package that Minnesota came up with the younger players, and it gives us a chance to take a step back here and retool it a little bit with a hybrid form and getting two young 20.
Get the music just to play them out.
Yeah, exactly.
Enough.
Retool it in a hybrid. Retool it with a hybrid form, Jeff.
Mm-hmm. I'm voting don't know on the poll question. Because
don't understand. Yeah.
Because I don't think they understand, Matt. Mm-hmm. They just are twisting themselves in knots here. Rutherford, the word rebuild was attributed to him in the press release the day of the Quinn Hughes. It's there. It's on the table. Use it.
It's like Linden back in 27. You were just getting comfortable with using the word.
and then just twisting themselves in knots, and particularly Patrick Allvin doesn't seem ready to go there just yet. Rutherford's used it now.
Yeah.
Retool in a hybrid fashion. Whatever it was. So I don't think they fully grasp what it means. It's a bunch of words.
I think that's right. It's a word salad. And gosh, like, first rule of communication, be clear, say what you mean what you say. When you start twisting words like this and using this gobbledygook, you either don't have a plan, you can't articulate the plan, you don't want to share the plan, or you're just trying to mislead intentionally. Do you think, I'll ask the question that a lot of Canucks fans were asking me at Greta on Saturday, Jeff, particularly after the victory against the Boston Bruins. Do you think 4 straight wins actually changed the equation for them?
I hope not. I hope that they are honest enough with themselves to know that Brendan Dillon put a puck in the net. A linesman threw a perfect pick for Evander Kane. They got a David Kampf goal, which was a Christmas miracle. And then Jeremy Swayman mishandles the puck behind the net in Boston. Every single one of those.
Swayman had a couple of
every single one of those wins.
Banana peels.
They did some good. I don't want to take away from the good that some of the young guys did, but I just laid out there were 4 highly unexpected, and I include a Kampf goal, highly unexpected happenings on that road trip that led to victories for the Vancouver Canucks. So the underlying numbers for the trip itself were not particularly kind to the Canucks.
No, they weren't.
Goaltending was spectacular, and it is the great equalizer after all. But no, I truly want to believe in my heart of hearts here that 4 straight wins, I think, allowed everybody to exhale after the trade. It allowed them to breathe a little bit as they tried to come to terms with the fact that this actually happened. And for a brief spell, it bumped them up the standings a little bit. But they go into the break right there, percentage points out of dead last. So, no, I don't think 4 wins fundamentally shifted anything. Again, fingers crossed when I say that, in the corner offices at Rogers Arena.
Okay, how about this? The plan all along, or for recently, the new plan, because if it is a plan, we're going to trade Hughes. We're going to get a high draft pick. But we think and hope we can contend next year. So let's just use the word rebuild because our fans will respond positively to that. And then after the fact, we'll sort of qualify it and we'll soften it because our plan is to be a contender next season. Is that the MO here?
I can't see it. I don't know how you get from here being almost dead last in the National Hockey League to there being a contender for the Stanley Cup or just a playoff team? Playoffs?
I mean, I guess it's, in their world, I suppose it would be competitive for playoff spot.
Matt, the further we go here, and I think we're going to get into it a little bit deeper, so I don't want to throw it all out there at this point, but the top end of this lineup has gone missing in action.
My goodness.
And I don't know if it ever returns, quite frankly.
Even if you love your young players, I think you have to look at the top of the lineup and have an honest conversation with yourself if you think you can bounce right back. Certainly not be a contender for the Cup. I mean, even competitive for Stanley Cup playoffs, you need far more than what you're getting out of some of these highly paid forwards. Honestly, bizarre stuff. Here's the other thing. Is Patrick Allvin have to wear this now for JR, for Rutherford? See the messenger here? Is he being set up as the fall guy? Okay, we made a Quinn Hughes trade. Everybody likes the return, but there's going to be some losing from here, and we're just going to try and bounce right back up. I don't want to be out there publicly trying to articulate that a whole lot. Patrick, why don't you go ahead and be the messenger, the mouthpiece on all this?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm there yet. I don't think Jim Rutherford can help. I mean, he told us 3 years ago, I got to stop talking and
zip it.
And how did that go?
He zipped it for a while, and then he came back and he started talking.
And it does feel like Amazon Prime has a deal in place with the league that general managers are going to be put forward because look,
they get a lot of GMs.
Patrick Allvin doesn't do a lot of local media.
Yeah.
But every time it's a prime game, he seems to appear in the first intermission with their panel. So, so I think that was as much timing as anything, that it just happened to be a prime game. But when you look at the body of work over 4 years and where they were and where they are now, if somebody does have to wear it, then it's a pretty good chance it's going to be Patrick Allvin.
I voted want to puke because here's the thing. If in fact your plan is, no, we're not going down to the studs rebuild, and Rutherford's already articulated that, then fair enough. Explain what the next steps are here. Say, hey, look, we've got some players on expiring contracts that, if we're not in playoff position or contention at the deadline, we would be looking to move. We have to make some decisions on players who are under contract beyond this year, because some of those players would have great trade value or are of interest to other teams around the league. So we have to make some calculated decisions there as well. But our goal is to add 25 and under players and to get back to competitiveness as quickly as possible, because we feel we owe that to the fans. Say something like that. Enough of this gobbledygook, intentional confusion, hybrid form, retool. Come on. I mean, just Canucks fans have been through so much and deserve so much better. And I can't believe there's still a world where they think they're pulling wool over eyes here. Anyways, vote on the poll question at the Sekeres and Price X and YouTube channels. I was hoping for a happier, cheerier poll question here before the holidays, but heard that in the first intermission last night. I'm like, what in the world is he talking about? Let's get to our top story. It's brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Nice while it lasted, but the data told us it wouldn't last for long. Canucks 4-game heater ends in a 5-2 loss to ex-coach Rick Tocchet and the Philadelphia Flyers. So that 4-game streak stands as the longest one since October 2024, falls short of the 5-game streak of January 2024. That was the most recent 5-game heater, and sends the Canucks off into the Christmas break on 15 wins, 18 losses, 3 defeats beyond regulation. It is 31st overall in the National Hockey League, and Jeff, they can head into the break 32nd and dead last if the Chicago Blackhawks win tonight versus those same Flyers. Philly has a quick turnaround with travel to the United Center. We're going to hear from head coach Adam Foote on what was at hand last night. We'll come back and discuss. Here's Foote, who just said the trip and the tired legs caught up to them.
They had more juice than us, their legs were going. They got inside ice on us. They got to the net, and that was the difference.
4 wins over this whole road trip, though. How would you sum up the entire trip?
That was a good trip. I mean, especially with all the movement and what happened. Just looked like tonight we ran out of gas, and that team was ready to go. And like I said, they were going to the interior, and that's where you can say it was a high stick or that, but it really wasn't. And then it bounces off the end bars, but you're in the right position, the right spot. So they worked real hard. We just felt like it was real early. We felt like we just didn't have it just seemed like we had the jump.
Thatcher Demko under fire all night. Jeff, Philadelphia gets 39 shots on goal. Demko allows 4 goals, and there was the empty netter as well.
Yeah, I agree. Like, they weren't going to win them all, Matt.
No.
I think we'll have to acknowledge that much. I gave the Canucks a little bit of a pass with the slow start in Boston on Saturday. They had played the night before. I thought maybe things would catch up to them then. Adam Foote said after that game that his veterans weren't very good. It was the young guys and their energy that sort of carried the day. They had Sunday off. This is the final game before Christmas. Like, leave it out on the ice. And yet they got outshot 14-5 in the first period. Shots were 28-17 through 40 minutes of play. Canucks had 2 early power plays and absolutely stunk on both of them. And in a game that was scoreless until the midway mark, an early power play goal, hey, maybe it gives them enough life. The way Demko was going, you hate to see them squander. Tankists don't care, but you hate to see them squander a goaltending performance like they got through 40 minutes. Eventually the dam broke. Thatcher Demko can only do so much here. But, yeah, I mean, again, we went through some of the reasons they were able to string 4 wins together on the backs of these young guys, some fresh energy, turning a page, whatever. Last night, their top-end guys were invisible. Philip Hronek, who's had a really nice first half of the season, was on for 4 of the 5 Philadelphia goals. It was an off night for him. You add it up, and Adam Foote is right. Like, look at the goals. The first one, a deflection at the top of the blue paint. The second one, a couple of whacks with Canuck players all around Grundstrom. And then Dvorak allowed to stand at the side of the net and wait for that puck to come back and tap it in. They got to the areas that you go to score goals, and the Canucks didn't do much to prevent it.
Now, this game does not conclude the 2025 calendar year for the Vancouver Canucks. Still 3 games remaining here in December. At home Saturday to Macklin Celebrini and the San Jose Sharks. In Seattle on Monday, then a return engagement with Philadelphia a week from today, and Rick Tocchet at Rogers Arena. So let's get into Crave the Stats, brought to you by Uber Eats. And today we look at calendar year 2025 for the Canucks because, and this guy's so good with math, they did hit 82 games in calendar year 2025.
Compressed schedule.
So the equivalent of a full NHL season has been played here. The Canucks 36, 37, and 9. That is 81 points in 82 games, JPat. It's a .494 points percentage, and that ranks 27th in the National Hockey League over that span, including that dreadful home ice record. 14, 19, and 3. The home ice record was dreadful last season. It has been dreadful this season as well.
Fewest home ice wins in the NHL in calendar year 2025. And as somebody pointed out in response on social, and they're not wrong, they essentially played all 12 months with maybe one legitimate center in the lineup on most nights. Because JT Miller got traded on the last day of January, but he had a foot out the door. His January wasn't much. And Elias Paterson was injured. Remember, he was injured after Christmas last year. And then they bring in Philip Hedl. He didn't last long. And then Elias Pettersson was shut down, didn't play down the stretch, and then we know the issues here. So it really has been 12 months.
That's a great point from who's ever in response. But again, you consider that, and I realize some players have changed since last season, although some of the players who have changed are Quinn Hughes and JT Miller, like pretty good players, on top of Pius Suter and some others. And you ask yourself, okay, retool in a hybrid form to try and get back to contention. Some of the responses that I got on that, Marty says, basically just means that we have a lot of guys with no move clauses, so we need to be calculated in case guys aren't going to waive. Fair enough, but you also have players who are without no move clauses and have value around the National Hockey League. Bob says, I don't care what they call it as long as they don't make errors. Trading a pick for an old guy, error. Trading for expensive expiring contracts who, fingers crossed, will sign here, error. Anything involving a fourth rounder, apparently, an error. And Marion says, it means they want to do two things. Make the playoffs, possibly winning run round and getting a lot of revenue this year, next year. Build a real cup contender for the future. These goals are incompatible, but that's what the owners want, so the hired help has to play both tunes. Okay, we've been at this for a while. I
keep making this point that making the playoffs and getting 2 home playoff dates,
I know,
should make a little bit of money for the owner. You know where the real money comes from?
The third round.
12 home playoff dates where the tickets go up the deeper you go and the more merchandise you sell.
And you're sharing revenues in the early rounds anyways, Jeff.
Yeah.
Like, it's the one thing that has been like, and you know, it's funny, we're seeing this across pro sports, and we've made the point on this show as well. I know Thomas Drance has made this point as well, that the Canucks are operated like a family business in a world where the Fortune 500s have come in, right?
Yep.
You see this in the NFL a little bit too. Chicago Bears and their ongoing stadium search. Like, it's a family business. The family's wealth is held up in the value of the team. Like, they don't have another business out there that's generating. And so you're starting to see the differences between ownership groups that have like more money than God and are looking at it in competitive terms and not necessarily sweating a few home playoff dates, and other owners who aren't as secure or are having troubles in their other businesses or just require the liquidity of their sports team having to operate with shorter-term, shorter-sighted goals. It's really, really too bad because honestly, can't build a practice facility, desperate for playoff revenue. Like if you're not rich enough to build a practice facility and go without playoff revenue for a couple of years because you're trying to construct a Stanley Cup champion, then you're not rich enough to own a franchise anymore in this league. You are giving others a head start in that realm. Anyways, I know a lot of fans would love to see their Christmas present would be this team sold. We'll see where that goes. Patrick Johnson had information about Aquilini financing going forward. Uber Eats.
Just quickly, one little addendum to the Uber Eats here is, so that's the overall 82-game record here in this calendar year. Underscoring exactly what we're talking about, the two leading scorers for the Vancouver Canucks over this 82-game span, Quinn Hughes, who doesn't play here anymore,
right,
and Philip Hronek.
Is it?
Yeah, two defensemen lead the Vancouver Canucks in scoring in this calendar year.
Well, and the guy they signed to play fourth line is their leading goal scorer this year as well. More on that in a second. Uber Eats is enabling fans to maximize their fandom all season long with exclusive game day deals on the app. Every time the Canucks are playing at home, you get a buy one, get one 6-piece chicken McNuggets from McDonald's in Vancouver, only on Uber Eats. From game day eats to paper plates, napkins if you're hosting, to all the ingredients you need to make your favorite game day dip before, during, after the game. Uber Eats is assisting every fan's hockey experience all season long. Max Sassone has scored in back-to-back games here, Jeff. He's got 8 goals on the season. Drew O'Connor scores last night. He also has 8. He's their leading goal scorer since November 1st. And they're both 1 goal shy of tying Brock Besser and Jake DeBrusk for second on the team with 9, behind only Kiefer Sherwood's 16. More on Besser and DeBrusk in a second, but a word or two about Sassone and O'Connor and the good work they have done of late.
Yeah, again, Max Sasson gets in behind the defense. How many of his goals have basically turned, the breakaways are sort of, from the hash marks down, just him and a goaltender. It's because he gets a step on the defenders. He's having a nice season. In a season here full of turmoil, Max Sasson, who didn't make the team out of camp, partially because of his waiver situation, hasn't looked back and got the extension. And so Merry Christmas to Max. I like a lot of what I see out of him. And Drew O'Connor.
So do I.
Like we said, Drew O'Connor, with his size and his speed, the opportunity he's going to get here, he should be a 15-goalish kind of guy, and he looks like he's on track there. I mean, ultimate garbage time goal last night in the dying seconds. Looked like the Flyers maybe had started to celebrate their victory, but hey, it goes on his ledger. It's his 8th goal of the season. And as you said, and I'll repeat for the people that didn't hear it the first time around, since November 1st, it's
leading
now Christmas, Drew O'Connor, your leading goal scorer for the Vancouver Canucks.
And he's one of these guys that, well, I'm not sure where he falls in hybrid retool because I'm not really sure what hybrid retool is. But, Jeff, he's got a 12-team no-trade list. So 19 teams you could send him to without his permission, his consent. Not all of those teams are going to need a winger. Not all of those teams are going to be in contention, although he is under contract next year at $2.5 million. He's one of the players that his future here in Vancouver is interesting because is he a contributor? Yep. Is he a contributor on a contract that you can live with? Yep, and especially if he continues scoring goals like this. And yet, is he a piece who's got some value and may even, in fact, be at the height of value right now on the trade market? Possibly.
Yep.
I think he's pretty close to that, right? He was seemingly a toss-in in the Pittsburgh Marcus Paterson deal. I think he's a little more than a toss-in guy. Now he's done some good work for the Canucks. So that's an interesting decision for me. I can understand the easy thing to do is just bring him back because he's a good player and you think, okay, we're trying to make the playoffs next year, if not beyond. But if you are serious about rebuild, not retool, he's an interesting test case between now and the trade deadline on March 6th. Atu Ratu is out of the doghouse. He's 8-1. He was 8-1 in the faceoff circle last night. We know he can win him some draws. And Nils Hoglander remains in the doghouse. Just want to get your take on what's happened with these two young players and some of the healthy scratchings of late, Jeff.
Yeah, Retool, I was a little surprised. It was 3 straight out on the road trip early on. Now, they started to win, and coaches sometimes are loath to switch up a winning lineup, but this guy wins you faceoffs at a rate that puts him among the best in the National Hockey League, not just best on this team, and kind of quietly had started to produce some points as well. They made him a healthy scratch that Black Friday afternoon in San Jose. And on a one-off, a young player, like, I don't have an issue with it. You put him back in and you see if there's a lesson learned. And he responded. And so I was surprised that he was the guy that came out. Now, I think there are still some concerns a little bit about his play away from the puck, and that's fine. He's young. He's going to have to learn. I also think that maybe with the injection of the Minnesota guys, they're trying to build out the fastest possible bottom 6, and that's one area that Retool doesn't measure up. Now, again, they sit him out, they win games. Ogren starts to play well, so if you thought maybe, like when they made the trade, I thought, okay, maybe Liam Ogren's going to get a couple games, then maybe they'll sit him down for a game.
Yep.
But he produced, and you couldn't take him out of the lineup.
No, you
and
can't.
Linus
He's playing too
Karlsson.
well.
And so all
Also
of a sudden,
playing too well.
You're looking like somebody's got to sit, and so it was unfortunate for Retool. He was the guy. Now he gets back in, and all of a sudden, it now means that Nils Hoglander is the odd man out.
Well, and Foot explained Hoglander in terms of, look, 3 and 4 is still a little much for the young man coming off the ankle surgery.
And
Fair
I got
enough.
that.
Yep, everybody gets that. Okay, 2 in a row. Well, we'll see where he goes forward here. But let me tie this back to Drew O'Connor, Jeff, because that's the other part of this calculation. Do you want to continue handing? So if we can just baseline and understand hybrid Retool as they know they're not going to be very good and contending for a playoff spot this season. They're accepting that. They're willing to be bad this year. They're just not willing to be bad next year. If that is the framework of our understanding of what the Vancouver Canucks are trying to do here, the channel they're trying to run, okay, fair enough. You can disagree with that, agree with that all you want. But what that should mean is that you are willing to create opportunity for young players in what's left of this season, Jeff, 49 games, whatever it is, in the hopes that that experience gain makes them better players next year, makes you a better hockey team next season. And so as we sit here and discuss healthy scratching for young players that you hope are going to be a part of this going forward. Retool, Hoglander, okay. One-offs here, one-offs there, no problem. Sitting for longer stretches, more difficult. Not to mention Jonathan Lekramaki, too, Jeff, who went on a tremendous heater in Abbotsford when sent down. You got Elias Paterson coming back into the lineup here at some point as well. So the bottom line is you only have 12 forward spots. You've got to be able to provide ice time, especially for these young players. And for me, that means that you've got to be a little more willing to trade some of these veteran forwards whom don't necessarily figure when you're going to be somewhere down the road in this Retool rebuild, hopefully contending. That, the likes of Connor Garland, who is without no move clause, no trade clause right now. Evander Kane's got a modified no trade. I think he's going to be a little bit closer to the deadline. And some others, Jeff, making the Sherwood trade a little sooner rather than later to open up that ice time as well. That's something that I think they have to take a good, long, hard look at now, like right after the holiday freeze. Get the jump before trade deadline.
No, I'm
Fair?
with you. And so, I've said for a while, I'm worried, as nice a season as Kiefer Sherwood has had, it would be the most Canuck thing that he gets injured. So take that variable out of the mix and just make the trade. Like, find the best offer there and make that trade. And in so doing, it would keep the Tankas happy because you're taking away your leading goal scorer, but it then frees up a roster spot for whether it's Hoglander in the lineup, whether it's bringing Lekramaki back up. You didn't mention Teddy Bluger. If he comes back at some point, there's
Fair.
another body. They have to clear the decks here. And so I do wonder what the long-term future of Nils Hoglander as a Vancouver Canuck.
And I'm with you there. The only thing is you would be trading him at absolutely low value right now, right? Coming off a bad year last year. Yes, he was better towards the end, but it was a terrible year last year, and he hasn't played much this year because of the surgery and the injury, and he hasn't played well in the few games that we saw. I hear you. If somebody thinks Nils Hoglander at $3 million is going to get back to being a 20-plus goal scorer, and we're willing to pay that price in a trade, fair enough. But I do think you're probably going to take some time to try and rehabilitate Hoglander's value. Whether there's enough runway between now and March 6th, not so sure. Maybe it's a file that waits till the summer. But yeah, at the very least, he's not increasing in value sitting in the press box. We can all agree on that.
No, and again, it's only 5 games since ankle surgery. I get it.
Yeah.
It's a big climb.
It's a big ask.
But for him to get into the lineup, he right now has to hurdle Linus Karlsson, Liam Ogren, Drew O'Connor. These guys are all pulling on the rope in the right direction, and he hasn't in his 5 games, and it's only 5 games. We know he can be a better player than he's shown, but have you seen anything that leads you to believe that Nils Hoglander is ever going to get back to being the 24-goal guy of a couple seasons ago?
There was that brief snippet late last season, Jeff, where I thought, okay, maybe he's back on track now.
And the underlying numbers were great at the end of the season, but there was no bottom
Still
line.
the bottom line. Honestly, Jeff, I've held this view for some time, much as because I do love his feistiness.
Yep.
There are some times out there where he has shifts that just endears you, but I think hockey IQ is a real issue here, has been, and that's a very difficult thing to fix. And so I do think, and we're talking 4 coaches now here who have healthy scratched him, I do think when you have had this long a period of step back or step forward, step back, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, maybe even more steps back than steps forward, because I just don't – I mean, Boudreau put it perfectly when he was here. If you're a 40-goal scorer, I can live with some defensive deficiencies. If you're a 20-goal scorer, not as much. And I just think there are going to be situations, especially off the puck, where Nils Hoglander doesn't capture a coach's trust. And I think if that's the case, it is going to be very hard to overcome that, because that's not something you can work on quite as, acutely as, say, Bo Horvat working on a skating or Quinn Hughes working on a shot. Some of the self-improvement areas that we've been a party to here with Canucks of late. Okay, let's get to these hired guns on the wings shooting blanks. Oof. Boy, and I thought I made a case for Brock Besser to be the next captain of the Vancouver Canucks, and dear God, he has just looked ghastly since the Hughes trade. And beyond that, Brock Besser hasn't scored in 11 games, everybody. He's got 1 goal in 18. That is nearly a quarter of an NHL season.
And after getting off to a decent start, like through October, we were like, hey, this guy's, he's on that 35-goal pace. Like,
he's happy to be here, and the vibes, the weight lifted off his shoulders, contract, no move.
And I give him a little bit of grace because he was attached to David Kampf for far too long there.
Far too long.
But the last 5 games, he's played exclusively with Marco Rossi, and there's been nothing for either one of those guys. There's been no chemistry.
No,
and we know
they
what Brock
were dominate. Did you see the analytics in Boston? They
had to change that line.
It was like AHL. I think an AHL line would have done better against Boston.
So Adam Foote had no choice. He put Evander Kane with Besser and Rossi.
That was the right move.
Because
you had to get somebody off that line.
But we know that Brock's a volume shooter, right? Mm-hmm. So in the 11-game drought here, just 20 shots on goal. That's not like when he's
can be.
Yeah,
can be. And Jeff, let me bring up the broader lens on Brock, because we talked about it all last season. This is not a guy who has been naturally blessed with foot speed, agility, dexterity, some of the athletic traits that allow guys to continue playing, particularly if they have a good hockey mind, and Brock does have a good hockey mind, past their best before dates. He turns 29 in February, Jeff. Has all the things that we feared about re-signing Brock on a long-term extension. Please tell me that's not coming home to roost here in year 1 of this extension.
I'm going to take it in a different direction, and I want to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's not 100% right now. Remember, 10 days ago, Adam Foote said he was going to the doctor to check
The
about the appendix.
It was not appendicitis,
No,
but they had worried
but
about.
Is there some mid-core issue there?
Yep.
And if ever there was a season, Matt, for a guy to step aside and say, I just can't go, I'm going to sit out here.
Now, you know hockey players, right? When the going gets tough, they're the guys who rush to fires to try and put them out as opposed to run away from. But
now is not the time to be playing through these injuries.
Especially, Brock, you're going to be here next year. You want McKenna or Verhoff or Stenberg or one of these
You got your contract.
Yeah,
you're not playing for a new contract here. He never looks quick out there. We know that. But right now, especially, it's hard to watch.
It's quicksand, Jeff.
And, no goals in 11 is one thing. 1 in 18 is a quarter of the season.
It's just. Then there's Jake DeBrusk. 1 goal, power play goal in 15. And we know he's streaky, but holy cow.
Yeah, enough with this streak.
Exactly. Need the new streak to start. Let's go streaking for Christmas, Jake. I find him a confounding player.
You're not alone.
On his good nights, man, terrific hockey player. On other nights, you just sit there and you go, what is this guy actually bringing to the table? But I will say this, Jeff, and I'm sure you discussed this on Rinkwide last night. Did you see his ice time last night?
I know he was the low ice time forward at 5-on-5.
52 total, Jeff.
Yeah, and that's the surest.
And that's with 3.5. That's with
the surest
3.16
indication of what a
power
coach
play
is
time.
seeing in a player, though.
That's right.
His ice time. And
9:05 even strength last night for DeBrusk.
so that's the biggest mystery in all of this, is that, yes, he's got 9 goals at Christmas. 8 of them have come on the power play. Matt, he has 1 5-on-5 goal. He has been a top-of-the-lineup winger all season long. And he has 1 5-on-5. This is a guy
He gets a little bit of the, you were with Kampf too long.
I understand, but think of the goals he scores on the power play.
I know.
All around the blue paint, nose for the net, going to those areas on the power play, fine. At 5-on-5, nothing.
It's just not there.
It's astounding.
And then there's Connor Garland.
If that's not enough.
One more. Oh, man.
We're supposed to be spreading Christmas cheer.
I was going to say. We've got to take Ebenezer to the third ghost here. Garland, 1 empty netter in 10, 2 in the last 14.
Yeah, so he's beaten a goaltender once in 14 games. It was a pretty goal in Anaheim. And this comes back to this point that I made earlier. You call it whatever you want. Put any name on this: rebuild, retool, hybrid not, whatever. You go as far as your best players. The guys at the top of your lineup can take you. And these, at the outset of the season, were supposed to be the 3 wingers that were going to be the goal-scoring leaders on the Vancouver Canucks. Mm-hmm. So when I go back to the fact that Hughes and Hronek are the top point getters in the past calendar year, Brock Besser and Connor Garland have 42 points. They're essentially half a point a game guys, and those are the top scoring forwards for the Vancouver Canucks here this calendar year. How? How do you get better? How do you contend? How do you build this into a roster that has aspirations to win something when these are your best players? They're under contract. These are guys that have proven track records of performance in the National Hockey League, and you are getting nothing out of any of them right now.
Yep. So I had a concept that I was workshopping, and that was, well, it is, Connor Garland is key to the rebuild or retool. And I say Garland and not Demko because I think from their point of view, moving Demko is a little too take it down to the studs rebuild, right? I know there's a lot of tankists out there, fans who say, oh my God, we have to trade Thatcher Demko as soon as possible because Thatcher Demko is just going to keep us too competitive here, float our boat, not give us a good enough chance at one of these top 3, top 5 picks or even the first overall. I get all that. But if that is fantasy land, if that is not in the realm of possibility, fair enough. Besser and DeBrusk have no move clauses. Connor Garland does not until July 1st, Jeff. Connor Garland is of an age where he's on that borderline, right? When is that level going to slip? Is he really going to be a frontline contributor for you when you anticipate competing for a Stanley Cup, even if you think you can get right back to competitiveness next season? He turns 30 in March. The other thing here is the extension for Garland pays him $6 million going forward after this. He's $4.95 right now. Is there an urgency to the Connor Garland file? Do you feel like the level is slipping now to the point where it is best to get off the player and get out of that extension and further the rebuild, retool, whatever you want to call it, prior to the March 6th trade deadline?
I've always believed that Connor Garland, who shows up and hustles, I'm not here to knock the effort.
Effort
of
is almost
Connor Garland,
never an issue.
Although
with
this
Garland.
road trip,
no, it's
wasn't
fair
great.
enough. He's a little quieter.
But I've always maintained that he would make a good team better in a third line capacity.
He'd be outstanding. If you're a Stanley Cup contender and you're getting his play driving on the third line, I think you're doing cartwheels, Jeff.
Right, but here he's expected to be a frontline guy, and even at his best, he's still a 20-goal, sort of 50-point guy.
Yep.
And I think, I sit here and I can scream about Besser and DeBrusk and Garland as a trio. I mean, all conversations lead back to the fact that these guys are wingers. They need centers that can get them the puck. And, if they had a winger that was a Matt Boldy or a Mikko Rantanen, a guy that, they can create a little bit themselves, right? But these three, they all need service from the middle. And so EP40's out of the lineup. Marco Rossi really hasn't done much. And again, it's only 5 games. I get that. And then we know that offense, it's a black hole beyond that. And so, all conversations sort of lead back to Rutherford's thing about being more expensive not to.
Yep.
They are continuing to pay this price. And really, I think that shows that nobody's paying more of a price than Brock Besser, Connor Garland, and Jake DeBrusk because they just haven't had any centers to play with all season long.
Fair enough. Yellow Dog, the High Five Hazy IPA, and the Squirrel Chaser Hazy Pale Ale, the 473 ml 4-packs are on special for the month of December. Look for it on sale at private and government liquor stores. We have a super chat here from Colin, who's following along on YouTube. And those of you on YouTube, that super chat button is always available to you. Hit it. Make your donation. Partial proceeds to the BC Mental Health Foundation. We'll be sure to get it onto the show. Colin asks, should the Canucks trade Sherwood, a defenseman, and Evander Kane for Kent Johnson? And my answer to that, Colin, is unequivocally no. Port Moody's Kent Johnson is not having a great year. No. You have to really believe in Kent Johnson bouncing back going forward. If he could play center ice a little more readily, he would be a little more intriguing. Now, he's just $1.8 million, just 23 years old. A lot of club control left there and has had some success in the National Hockey League, was a 16-goal, 40-point guy in 22-23. Then it was a step-back season. Then last year, 24 goals and 57 points. If you know you're getting that guy, absolutely. But it's 11 points in 35 games this year.
Goals. I didn't
just
realize
the
it was
3 goals.
That bad.
His
Wow.
ice last year, they were playing him 17-plus minutes a night. This year, he's not even cresting 14. So I understand, Colin, if you want to look at it and say that's a buy low candidate. But Sherwood, Adi, and Kane, are you kidding me? Like, is that a roster defenseman you're talking about? Kiefer Sherwood, in and of his own right, I think, has a ton of trade value. Jeff, we talked about it yesterday. Columbus makes its move for Mason Marchment, right? A second and a fourth. Montreal gives up a second-round pick for Philip Deneau. Now, Deneau under contract for 1 more year, plays center ice, has been there before. Maybe a different case study there.
Going back to Montreal, they were willing to
exactly.
pay up for,
and, a defensive center at $5.5 million next year. But Marchment's a UFA, and he went for a second and a fourth, and he's having a poor season as well. Like, the Sherwood value is above and beyond that.
It
right?
better be. It has to.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing, though, Blake and I discussed it. Columbus and Montreal were two teams that were circling Sherwood. So has the Sherwood market shrunken a little bit?
I think the Deneau being a center, like I wouldn't include that in this conversation, but Columbus, yeah. I mean, now, could Columbus continue to move assets if they feel that they've got a chance to scratch and claw their way into the playoffs? Maybe. But, yeah, I mean, anytime a deal goes down around the National Hockey League, I think you do have to sort of look at it through that lens of who's involved, what needs are those teams addressing, and are the Canucks missing out on an opportunity here? And that's why, again, I don't want to see them hold this auction on Kiefer Sherwood until the deadline, just because that's another 25 games or something. I do fear that an injury would completely muck up a possible trade for Kiefer Sherwood. So I'd like to see them get proactive, and that's generally Jim Rutherford's way. So we'll see what happens. Roster freeze in effect now. It's not happening over the next bunch of days, but I do hope that the Canucks are still in a trading mood when the roster freeze is lifted.
Have to be. 9 days away from the Olympic rosters being due. Only a few games left to impress, and that's even if there is time now for the hopefuls. Who knows? Maybe the brass have already come to their conclusions. Elliot Friedman earlier this week saying expect some fights or disagreements between players and clubs about participation. You know, these players are going to want to play no matter what kind of injury ailment they may have going on. You know, these clubs are going to be awfully worried and sort of nudge. So, you know, your knee, the Olympics. Now, we didn't hear a lot about this last week, Jeff, as we were unpacking the Quinn Hughes trade, but Canucks told Quinn he couldn't play at the Four Nations last year when he wanted to. Do you think that wedge came into play at all with Hughes and ultimately his decision, or do you think it was just the competitiveness or lack thereof of the Vancouver Canucks?
Yeah, he was disappointed. Obviously, I remember being around him, talking to him before and after Four Nations, and of course, Mike Sullivan had him on a plane on his way to Boston for the final. It never actually happened for him. It was best on best tournament, and he was left on the outside. I think he was disappointed. I don't think that frustration played into the greater frustration with the Vancouver Canucks and the direction of the hockey club and the lack of winning this year. So I can't.
It was just on the pile. It wasn't a big part of the pile.
Exactly. Yeah, there were other fires that were out of control. That was just a little smoke over there. So, no, I'm not going to make that link with Quinn and his disappointment with the franchise.
Okay. The good news for the Canucks is they have very few of those candidates this year.
Yeah.
Where are you on Demko? What do you think? I mean, he's performed very well for a very bad team.
Yeah, I think being out a month probably was the final nail. But, I mean, Connor Hellebuck's basically missed a month as well. Now he's back, but his job was never in jeopardy. I just think that Thatcher Demko had to come back, get his game to the level that he's got. That's maybe the biggest surprise coming off the month layoff is how quickly he's got his game back in form. But I think in the eyes of USA Hockey, Amanda, they've got options.
Oh, yeah.
That Thatcher Demko had to be good and had to be healthy. And he wasn't able to stay healthy for most of the month of November, and I think that ultimately is going to work against him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Teddy Bluger, I suspect, is going to have to get back and actually play some NHL games if he's going to go represent Latvia at the Olympics. I imagine Lucas Reichel, if he's still a Vancouver Canuck, of course in Abbotsford now, makes Germany because they don't have a lot of NHLers. Look, Filip Hronek is absolutely going to be a part of the Czechia team. Elias is still part of the Sweden team?
I think he makes it. I was asked that in my Canucks Army mailbag.
Yeah.
I think he makes the team, but Matt, like his role there, like Leo Carlson has clearly ascended to like 1C.
No question.
And then you've got, because Zibanejad, who hasn't had a great season, but a veteran guy that's been through the battles. Joel Eriksson-Ek, Marcus Johansson's having a nice season for the Minnesota Wild. Is there a world in which he doesn't even play center on that team? And we remember at Four Nations at the end, I mean, he was parked essentially. Now, some of that, the knee was bugging him, I think, a little bit. But This whole thing.
Jeff, there was a world where he came in this year. If he's had a banger year, he's the number one centerman for Sweden.
For sure.
And then Leo Carlsson ascends like he does. You mentioned standbys there, and Zibanejad and Eriksson Ek. William Karlsson can play the middle as well. No, as I sit here and I go up and down, it could very easily be Elias in a bottom six role, a fourth line center role, potentially.
That's what it's come to, though. But he's got to get back in action as well. And this past 3 weeks has just been so mystifying. Adam Foote kind of addressed it, but didn't really clear it up. And, we'll see what happens. He's got to be activated to get back in the Canucks lineup, which would mean they've got to make some sort of move. The roster freeze comes off on the weekend. So I think if he gets a clean bill of health, but they're not going to have a practice. Like, they're going to have a morning skate on the 27th and play that night. And just listening to Adam Foote yesterday, it didn't sound like he was anticipating him being ready for the game against the Sharks. So
Hedl, of course, what can you say there? David Kampf might actually be a candidate for the Czechia side, I imagine, Kevin.
Well, they told Kampf, like, he when the Leafs cut him free, he was looking at going back to playing in his homeland. And they said, if you want to play in the Olympic team, you've got to be in the National Hockey League. And so I think that was part of the reason that he decided to stay here in North America. So I think he has designs on being part of that Czech team. And as we've seen, like, there's no offense, but he can still fill a defensive, penalty-killing, face-off kind of role. And so that's what I assume he would be. And then Lankinen is the other guy that... And
Lankinen, I suspect, makes the team. I mean, you're keeping
be the third.
3 goaltenders, Finland, the one other name... It's tough sledding. It's a good group of defensemen. Is Marcus Paterson, you think, have any chance, or he's just not played well enough?
When you talk about guys
Hedman's hurt, but
supposed to be back.
Forsling, Edvinsson in Detroit. You've got Brodin, Rasmus Anderson, Erik Karlsson, Hampus Lindholm. So
I don't think so. Certainly in my world, I'm not expecting Marcus Paterson. And we talked about those forwards that are struggling. If there's another guy on this team that just needs a little reset here and a holiday break, I don't know what's happened. And we saw it again last night on one of the Philadelphia goals. The number of times Marcus Paterson is a left shot defenseman ends up over on the right side of the ice, and this Adam Foote man-on-man, he just doesn't seem to have grasped what the coaches are asking him this year. It has been a real tough go for Marcus Paterson.
And that's got to be so frustrating for Rutherford, because Rutherford seemingly was his biggest booster. And look.
Had to have him.
I realized sign him. Yeah, exactly. And I realized there were other pieces involved, but like JT Miller's maybe hanging on as a second line center in the NHL. But when you're trading a second line center, for a defenseman, like, that defenseman needs to be an unquestioned top 4 guy giving you good play.
And also, Matt, in the aftermath,
he's not bringing you anything offensively, so he's got to be an absolute defensive stopper, like your matchup guy. Your hold the other team's best players to account and off the score sheet, and he's doing none of that.
No, he's a better player than he's shown this year. I believe that. But also, in the aftermath of the Hughes trade and all the labels that are thrown around, and then we're hearing, really the rebuild tracked back to the JT Miller deal, then why are you taking that first rounder, peddling it for a 30-year-old defenseman, and then committing to him
for 5
long
years.
term?
So it makes absolute no sense. So we'll see where the Vancouver Canucks are on Olympic participation when we get back next week. This is our last show this week. We'll be back at it next Tuesday, Wednesday. Mike, is that what we said?
Yeah,
Tuesday, Wednesday. Next week. And, of course, these rosters are due on the 31st. We anticipate a little bit of a delay in the announcement of all of them. So at some point, a couple of days into the new year, we'll know the full participation. But then even there, you've got some NHL games to play. There could be injury, right? So we'll see where it goes. Okay, time now for our menu. It's brought to you by our friends at Greta. We had an awesome time there on Saturday with the Canucks Army holiday watch party. Really enjoyed it. Thank you to everybody who showed up and to the Greta staff for once again making it a fun evening. And it's an awesome stop to pregame, postgame, because you are steps from the arena or the stadium. If you need a venue for team building, holiday party, check out Greta. They have the awesome street food menu, the pizza taquitos to die for, and the arcade that encircles the bar, always fun. You can tell people rush there during the intermissions. For more info to book your event, go to gretabar.com. Greta 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects is going to stop by. Cam, will talk to him on, well, a lot of the new guys for the Vancouver Canucks, what he's seeing from Ogren, what he's seeing from William, his take on Retool, hybrid Retool. Plus Cam going to the World Juniors, so a preview there looking at Braden Coots, Wilson Bjork, the Canucks. Well, they have a third player, but those two in particular, not to mention some of the players who will be there at the top of the draft class in 2026. And the Canucks may very well hold one of those picks, so we'll talk to Cam about that. And then Tyson Cole of Canucks Army, and he fills in with you, fills in for Irf sometimes on Rinkwide Vancouver. I really like what Tyson is doing on social media. He's calling it Cole's Notes immediately after Canucks games with some bullet point thoughts on the game, so we'll go over what he saw last night and point forward on a number of different files there with Tyson. Then later in the program, setting you up as best we can for NFL Week 17 and, well, the playoff possibilities. But, Seattle Seahawks right in the thick of one of the great divisions we have ever seen in NFL history, with 3 teams already on 11 wins with a couple more games to play and already clinching playoff spots after the 49ers victory last night against Indianapolis. We know the Rams, 49ers, and Seahawks are going to the playoffs. We just don't know what seeds they'll be in. And, of course, one of them is very likely to be not only the NFC West champion, but also the number 1 seed in the NFC Conference, get that first round bye. So all of that is coming up on the program. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. Mr. Paterson, what are you looking at?
Yeah, I see some value on the Seattle Kraken in Los Angeles tonight. It's back-to-back for both teams. Kraken were winners in Anaheim. Kings have been miserable on home ice, and they were again last night. They lost to Columbus. It's the final night before the holiday break, and I think that's a bit of a wild card. Teams maybe starting to drift off into holiday mode, so take the underdogs here. You can get the Kraken at plus 200 on the money line. Worth a shot.
I'm looking at Christmas Day in the National Football League where the Detroit Lions play at Minnesota. Now, Detroit on the outside looking in of the postseason right now. Absolutely have to get the win. Not to mention, I can only imagine they're still smarting from the way that game against the Steelers ended on Sunday. If you missed that, an absolutely crazy play and a conflating explanation from the officials at the end that I think had some Lions fans, like our buddy Elijah Ford here, helping out on today's program, had some Lions fans angry. Look, Minnesota beat up, nothing to play for. They may have a backup quarterback who has no business playing in the NFL. I sit here and I look at some of the quarterbacks who are playing, Jeff, and I say to myself, you're telling me Nathan Rourke isn't better than these guys? Anyways, it's Lions -6 in Minnesota. Yeah, less than a touchdown. Give me that. Give me Detroit on the point spread against the Vikings. Thursday, Christmas Day. It's the middle game of a NFL tripleheader. This segment, a presentation of Bet365. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game, use code NATION when doing so. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Cam Robinson coming up next. Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center, and this next segment brought to you by Pizza Pizza. And this December, when you order on the app, you'll get a coupon for a free medium one-topping pizza in January. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Download the Pizza Pizza app and order now with your Pizza Pizza account. limit 1 coupon per person. As we welcome in the director of everything at Elite Prospects, he's headed to the World Juniors in Minnesota. Oh. It is a very festive ho, ho, ho. Cam Robinson here on Sekeres and Price. How you doing, buddy? Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you guys. I'm doing well. I mean, my sweater doesn't compare to yours, though, Matt. Though that thing looks fantastic.
Not many do. We asked them for garish. We said make it as garish as you possibly can, and they delivered. Thank you for bringing some holiday spirit to the hit here, Cam. Starters, thoughts on the game last night?
How many high danger scoring chances did they have? 3? One was in garbage time.
Yeah,
not a lot.
Eh?
Yeah, might have been generous. Yeah, not their best effort. I mean, Thatcher Demko kept that one from being too ugly, I think, as well. It was inevitable. The hot streak had to come to an end at some point, and I think that it's probably for the best long term here if they can find a few more of those losses down the stretch.
Of course, across the ice last night, or down the ice last night, was Rick Tocchet, the former head coach of the Vancouver Canucks, now with the Philadelphia Flyers. We will see him a week from tonight at Rogers Arena as he makes his return after deciding to leave the Canucks last season and go join Philadelphia. So we got our first compare and contrast example, Cam, of the differences between Rick Tocchet hockey and Adam Foote hockey. We'll get another dose of that in 7 days' time. Just for the layperson, explain it. How do they play differently? What does Tocchet do and what does Foote do, and what have been the differences with this year's Canucks team?
I mean, in a perfect world, Tocchet's structure is, predicated on defense, structure, and, capitalizing off mistakes off the rush, and that's the brand that he likes to play. It doesn't always work out that way, and it didn't always work out that way in Vancouver with the rush chances, but that's how he tries to run it. Foote, it's still early, obviously, in his coaching career here, but it seems like he is, we've talked about it before, is that in zone in the defensive end, it's this man-to-man setup too, where you got switches. Foote talked about saying that it's going to be, kind of consistent, that they worked on that system together and that he was going to bring the same things. They don't have the same personnel. It's a little different on the ice. And so they're not able to do some of the things that they were under Tocchet's system. And I just wonder about how the communication and the expectations are being delivered from Foote to the team. Are they all clear on what they need to be doing on every shift? Or now that they're going a little bit younger, is it a little more free? Is it a little more open? We see a guy like Z Bouillon, he's kind of breaking that mold, not as much as Quinn Hughes was able to, but he's able to freewheel a little bit more once he gets the puck. And so I'm interested to see how Foote adapts down the stretch, and if he does open things up a little bit more and preaches a little more creativity and building chemistry with some of these younger guys. But right now it still has that defensive feel to it, just with less structure, I would say.
We almost saw Michigan. Did you see that in the first period? Matvei Michkov tried on the power play. Puck hops over his stick. Now, we know that Michkov and Rick Tocchet, still a work in progress. Trevor Zegras, though, has fit in seamlessly there in Philadelphia. Are you at all surprised that Trevor Zegras has found a match with Rick Tocchet?
No, I'm not. I think that he needed a change of scenery, really, getting out of Anaheim. I think that was the biggest thing for him. Highly skilled player. Yes, there are some warts defensively, and he'll try some things that might make you pull your hair out if you're a coach like Rick Tocchet. It's not dissimilar to what Matvei Michkov is now, but it's just he's more developed, Zegras is. He's had time to go through and figure some things out. And, watching him last night, he's highly creative. Like, he had that puck in the low slot on his backhand, and instead of just trying to fire it quick on net, he makes the dish out to Konechny in the high slot for the chance. So he sees things that other players don't, and I think that that's always been his kind of superpower. Michkov is not immune to risk whatsoever, and so he doesn't have those borders designed yet, and I think that that's where Tocchet has to work with him, and he has to be receptive to that if he wants to become a player in this league that can produce and be that creative and offensive generator. But he also has to play some structure with his game too, and there has to be checks and balances in place. And I think Tocchet's probably the right coach to do it for him versus a guy like Tortorella, who might just come down with an iron fist. We saw them on the bench having some discussions, and Tocchet said, that's just normal stuff, right? Like, you have to work with these players, you have to talk to them, and I don't think it should be blown out of proportion. But it will be interesting to see in the next year and the year after that, if the same mistakes continue to haunt Mishkov, if then, the leash gets a little bit tighter.
If we leave last night alone and we just look at the first 4 games of the road trip, the 4 wins, the first 4 games for the new guys from Minnesota, Liam Ogren obviously scores a nice goal against the Rangers and then has the big night in Boston the other night. Buum makes his debut and looked pretty good against New Jersey. Has sort of settled in, maybe not with the flash that we saw in his first game. Marco Rossi still seems to be the work in progress. Do you think it's just fair to say that this guy's a number 2 center, and right now, without Elias Paterson, they're asking a little bit too much of him playing at the top of the lineup?
Yeah, I mean, he can play with good players. He can be a top line center. He was for stretches last year, and he had looks even a little bit this year too. But he was playing with guys like Matt Boldy and Kirill Kaprizov and really highly talented play driving guys who can do a little digging, do a little skill, and then he can be that speedy facilitator that has a really strong base. You don't want him cosplaying as your 1C though. You in the ideal circumstance, he is your second line center, and you're surrounding him with 2 strong wingers. Whether they're big, whether they're fast, that mix, that combination, you need to find the right mix for him. I do think it's so early on here in Vancouver that we shouldn't rush to any judgment. I think he's a good player, and I've said it all along. I think that in the right circumstances, with the right players, he is a very viable second line center who can generate 60 plus points for you. But you shouldn't look at him as always going to be able to drive play or do things on his own. He's going to need to be a facilitator for high quality wingers.
You have also been a Liam Ogren stan. What have you made of this last week, Cam, for the young Swedish winger who's finally broke the goose eggs in the points column?
Yeah, I love to see it. And I love to see people that haven't really watched this player, maybe ever, starting to come on board. I mean, like, oh, this Liam Ogren kid, he's pretty good. And he is. He's a good player. He's a horse. I don't think that he got the right opportunities in Minnesota. And I talked to people on the leagues, on the team side of things, that agreed that it's like it wasn't a fit because he wasn't getting the opportunities. And he's another one that if you let him run, you don't have to let him run wild because he's not going to be that risk-taking, hyper-competitor, hyper-creative guy. But you need to give him the opportunity to go and bang and get in there and play 15 minutes a night and have some guys to work with and let him get to the net front and be that big body and have that heavy shot, because he brings a lot of things to the table that you look for in like a really viable third liner. But I still think the offensive ceiling, it can be higher too. Is that another one that if you put him in the right situation with the right skillful center and another one on the wing, that he could be a really good second line for you and a leader and a guy who can play defense and be physical and do a lot of those intangible things that help you win in the playoffs long term. So I love to see it, and I think he's going to be a great player for Vancouver long term.
I didn't think enough was made. I mean, a lot was going on in Boston the other night, the 7-round shootout and everything else, but on his goal, his deflection goal, like, he just sheds Hampus Lindholm, a guy that's been doing this for a long time.
It's a big, strong defenseman too, Jeff.
It wasn't a fair fight.
Absolutely.
And I just thought, like, that kind of got lost in everything else that was going on in that hockey game.
We brought up the workout picture from this summer of Ogren in the gym. Like, holy cow. Like, when Cam calls him a horse, like he's Clydesdale, for heaven's sake.
Yeah. And so this is what I mean, is that, like, I've watched him do this, like in the J20 in his draft year. It was ridiculous. It was like a man amongst boys, and he was 17 playing against 19, 20-year-olds, and he would just do it. He would score 3 a night, and he would just shirk you off him, and like you were nothing. And then we started to see he even did that a little bit in the American League too, when he was nearly a point a game as a 20-year-old. Not an easy thing to do in the American League. He was starting to impose that, and then we just hadn't seen it at the NHL level yet. And he didn't have confidence. You could see it when he was getting 4 minutes a night or something. He just didn't have the confidence. And now new circumstances, fresh place that they're like encouraging him. They want him to be an asset for them, and so you have to bring him along, and you can see that confidence building. And like you imagine what he's going to look like at 26, 27 when he's shirking guys off at the net front and in the slot and in the corners and stuff like that. That's when you're really going to get the juice out of him.
On Buium, and first of all, I want to give Buium an awful lot of credit. I forgot to mention this last week or earlier in the week. He's asked, what kind of defenseman are you, Jeff? And how often have you ever heard somebody say, well, I'm an offensive defenseman? Even the offensive defensemen say, well, I take care of my own zone, but I look for opportunities to get involved in the mix, blah, blah, blah. He knows straight away, I'm an offensive defenseman. Okay. Well noted. We know what you are. So he makes a mistake last night.
Yep.
You talked to me about his defensive prowess or lack thereof, where it's at now and where you think it can get to, because it doesn't take a discerning scouting eye to watch him on the puck and say that's a guy who's pretty good on the puck, who's got some offensive flair to his game. But take on the defensive side of Bouillon for us, Cam. Tell us about the player there.
So I've long said this. I'm sure I've said this on the show multiple times over the years too. I think you need to have 3 things to be a quality defender in the NHL, maybe 4. But you need to be able to skate, you need to be smart, and you need to work hard. I think if you have those 3 things, you're going to be able to defend at the NHL level. Now, if you have size, that 4th thing, well, that's just going to help a little bit more too, right? But you look at a guy like Troy Stecher, right? He had those 3 things. And he's a great defender in the NHL, even though he's overlooked because he was undrafted and he's a little bit small. But for Bouillon, I see his game is that I've watched him coming up, playing before he even got to college, is that, yes, the offense was there, the skating was there. But by the time he got to Denver and throughout his career there, his defensive game came along too. At the World Junior level, his defensive game was able to shine as well too. Cole Hudson put up all the points last year at the juniors, but Bouillon was the most important piece for them on the blue line there, I would say, is that I believe that it's going to take some time, but he'll get there because he's smart, he can skate, and he's hardworking. And so I don't have much concerns. You're not going to have him out there. You don't want him playing defensive shutdown minutes. That's not the role. But he's going to be able to play at a level where you're not concerned. Mistakes might happen because that's just what happens when you're an offensive defenseman and you take some risks. But again, he can skate and he can get back and he works hard that he can clean up a lot of those errors. And it's just going to be reps. He's just going to need to see many, many reps at the NHL level and figure things out. Where are my boundaries here? What can I do? What can I get away with? And where do I need to clean up? I have no problem. When he's in the prime of his career, I think he's going to be just fine defensively.
The Canucks could be 32nd overall at the end of play heading into the Christmas break tonight. No, but I mean, they bounced up. Yeah. They leapfrogged teams here in that 4-game winning streak. So they could be 32nd and dead last here again tonight if the Chicago Blackhawks win. But, Cam, we've started to see Chicago leak a ton of oil minus Bedard and Nazar. Mm-hmm. We are seeing the Winnipeg Jets in free fall. We know Calgary and Nashville is bad. Seattle is not only bad, but now selling off parts. How difficult is it going to be to tank and have some of the highest draft lottery odds?
Thatcher Demko is going to be the biggest hindrance to the tank. And if he's healthy and he is focused and driven, he is going to win games for this team. And that he's going to do it on his own because he's that good of a goaltender. That's why he's in the conversation for the Olympics. That's why he's one of the top goaltenders in the league when he's on his game. And so I think that is going to be the biggest hindrance to them falling down. I think that the team itself, they're going to have ups, they're going to have downs, they're going to win a couple, they're going to lose a bunch in a row too. The good thing for them is there isn't that one demonstrably bad team this year or 2 or 3 that are going to be like, gosh, are these guys even going to get 55 points this year? They're not there. Now, Chicago without Connor Bedard, that's as close as you're going to get. But, Bedard will be back too. And they have young talent and they're exciting talent and they want to climb up a little bit too. They're not trying to fall to the bottom. So, are they going to get 32nd Vancouver? That's probably going to be difficult. I think the name of the game, though, is you got to get a top 5 pick. You got to do everything you can to get a top 5 pick. And that's, I'm not going to sit here and say trade Thatcher Demko because you want to get a top 5 pick. That would be very proactive in a tank. And we saw, Patrick Alvin last night talking about it. This isn't a rebuild, right? This is a hybrid retool. Yeah. That's a new one. That's a new one for me. I can break out the hockey dictionary and figure out what he's trying to say there. But, it's a little, it's obviously very telling. We know this. We know ownership. We know management that they're not looking for a lengthy rebuild. I'm sure they're looking to get the highest pick they can this year, sell off assets, but then they want to quickly turn this around. I don't think they want to be bad in 2027, which means if you trade Thatcher Demko, you're probably bad in 2027 as well, maybe 2028 as you come along here. So, as low as you can get, the top 5 picks in this draft, I think have the potential to help the organization long-term in a big, big way. Once you fall out of that zone, now you're starting to look at maybe he's ready in 2 or 3 years. Maybe he can be a top 6 guy. Maybe he can be a top 4D sort of thing.
And you mentioned the top 5 picks in this year's draft or the 2026 draft, and you're going to see a number of them at the World Juniors in Minnesota. On the Canadian side, of course, winger Gavin McKenna, of Penn State University, and Whitehorse, defenseman Keaton Verhoff, ex-Victoria Royal, now with North Dakota. And we're also going to see Ivar Stenberg, the Swedish winger, who has been tabbed as the best Swedish player or European player available in this draft. Tell me, what's at stake for these guys at the World Juniors, Cam? Who's got the best opportunity to advance their case for number one?
Yeah. We should mention Carson Karls as well, who I imagine will see a lot more ice time than Keaton Verhoff does at this event too. And I think that he has a chance to really jump up the left side of the Canadian blue line. Not to say that it's weak, but if you want to point at anything on that roster and be like, that's not solidified, I think it's the left side of the blue line. Right now, Karls is starting as that number 7, the 4th guy on the left side. I could see him jumping all the way up to number 1 and being like kind of that safety valve next to a Zane Parekh. He's very strong defensively, but he has good offense too. I think that he has a big chance to really elevate. He's already considered a top 10 pick. He has a big showing here. I think he could look at himself as a top 5 pick. Ivar Stenberg, though, as you mentioned, what he's doing in Sweden right now for Frölunda, point of game player. We've never seen that from a draft eligible in the SHL. He was Sweden's best player against Canada in that pre-tournament game, that second one too. I think he obviously has a huge, opportunity here to really stake his claim to being like, hey, I could be the first overall pick. Not a lot of teams love to take a winger first overall. I think teams would hesitate to draft any winger ahead of Gavin McKenna, and Stenberg is a winger, but he looks very good. He has the speed, he has the tenacity, he has that work ethic. He has a lot of things that Gavin needs to show. He just doesn't have the pure skill level of a Gavin McKenna. But I think a big tournament here could really set the stage for him to be like, if I'm not 1, you better be looking at me at 2.
Help me out, because I had not heard of the name Ethan McKenzie until a couple of weeks ago when I saw him on Canada's list for the World Juniors. He's from West Kelowna. He plays for the Edmonton Oil Kings and somehow went undrafted, and yet everything that I read and see of him, Cam, is these fabulous tributes to what kind of defenseman he is. And speaking of role, it sounds like he may have a pretty big role on this Canadian team. Tell us about West Kelowna's Ethan McKenzie, who obviously was overlooked last year in the NHL entry draft.
Passed over twice.
Yeah.
Twice. So he was one of the youngest players in the draft in his draft year. He's a September birthday. I think he's like 10 days shy of being, passed over only once. We tagged him at EP as like a potential breakout in his draft +1. And he did. He broke out in his draft +1. We ranked him, I think it was like 127th overall last year's draft as a draft +1 guy. Didn't get drafted again. That was a surprise. I figured he would have been a mid-round pick. And imagine a team did take him in the 5th or 6th round, and now all of a sudden he's really popped as a 19-year-old. Now he makes Team Canada. You'd be looking like a genius, but instead he went through the draft again. He's going to go back as a 3rd-time entry, and there's a world where he could go on the end of day 1 if he has himself a big tournament here. So he's a dog. He's an absolute dog. You do not want to go into the corner with him. He's not the biggest guy, but he's just ferocious. He just gets inside position. He lifts stick. He gets to the net front. He does all the little detail things. Plus, he's got pretty good chops offensively too. Like he's put up 30+ points, I believe, for the Oil Kings. He knows how to move the puck. He knows how to skate in the offensive zone. He can hit the passes and hit the seams. It's a great story. I love that when he got called into his GM's office there with Edmonton, and he thought he was getting traded. But it was, he's like, oh no, what's going on here? But in fact, no, you're off the World Junior Camp. And so, thrilled for him and rooting for him for sure.
Absolutely. Do you want to ask him about the Swedish kid, Jeff?
No, I wanted to ask him about what he saw in the pre-tournament games from Canada, and particularly Braden Coots. Obviously, a ton of emphasis here through a Canucks lens. So what did you see from Canada, but what did you see from Coots, particularly in those 2 pre-tournament games?
Yeah, I think that in the first game, they're sitting some of their guys, some of their locks, and he had a greater, opportunity to play up the lineup, and he was on the first power play unit, and he was killing penalties and stuff, and he was playing on the wing, and I thought he did very well. I thought he was very good in that first game. In the second game, then we saw right after the cuts, now we're looking at this is our lineup. This is now we're starting to fiddle around playing 4th line center. But, I think that's pretty good. I think that's a pretty good spot for him because going into the tournament, we're like, hopefully he makes a team, but he's probably battling to be that 13th forward. And I think it's clear now that that's Caleb Desnoyers, and Carter Bear is going to be the 14th forward for the Canadians. So Coots has himself a spot in the roster, playing down the middle, which is where he's best suited. And he brings everything to the table. I've been harping about it. He has great offensive skill. He has great defensive skill. He's a leader. He can win faceoffs. He can play the middle. He can play the wing. So if Canada, he's that perfect kind of Swiss Army knife for you, where you can start as their 4th line center And then you need to jump on the third line, put him on the wing next to Cole Baudouin. You need to jump up top in the top six because of an injury. Great. You got him there too. Jet Luchenko's playing on the second power play unit right now. It wasn't looking great. That power play looked pretty awful. It wouldn't surprise me if we see Coots getting a look up on that second power play unit too, because, it's a role he's played on the half wall in Seattle too. So I think he's going to have himself a really good tournament, a strong tournament, and just be that useful piece for the Canadians. It's someone that other teams should watch out for because he's going to be able to generate some offense from the bottom six too.
Last hit with Cam before the World Juniors. I'm so intent in getting all the names in, I damn near skipped over Braden Coots. Shame on me. Thanks, JPat. The Swedish kid aforementioned that I was talking about is the Canucks draft pick, Wilson Bjork. Cam. His brother Vigo is set to be a first-rounder in 2026. Wilson's at Colorado College. He's a winger. The Canucks took him in the 5th round last year. Tell us about this Canucks prospect on the Swedish team.
He's a good player too. He's going to play down the lineup from Vigo for sure, who we're going to see in the top six and play the middle of the ice. Wilson probably more on the bottom six, fourth line. He sat out that second game against Canada too, but they're just kind of resting guys. I imagine he's going to be in the lineup, but he's starting to pick it up in the NCAA too. He's starting to it's a difficult adjustment to jump from Sweden to college hockey, and I think he's finding his legs there. I saw I caught some of his games where he had a 2-goal game the other night before he left for camp. So he's another one. He's got kind of an across-the-board skill set. Nothing really jumps off the page for him, but he's a mature player. You can trust him in his own zone. He can make some things happen offensively for you. So he's going to be similar to Coots. He's going to be a bit of a Swiss Army knife on the wing for the Swedes. I think you could see him move around in different spots there. And I'd say that if he's put in offensive situations, that's going to be bad news for Sweden because they have a ton of offensive players this year. Their forward corps is second only to Canada. So you expect him to play a more depth role for him. But, in the minutes that he plays, they should be responsible and hopefully can generate a little bit too.
Well, buddy, we wish you safe and stress-free travel to Minnesota. It's a tough time of year to be traveling to a northern clime. So I hope you make it there in time to catch all the action. Cam, thanks for everything in 2025, buddy. Really enjoyed catching up with you each and every Tuesday. Merry Christmas to the Robinson family, and look forward to catching up with you in 2026.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Merry Christmas to you guys, too.
Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center in this next segment, brought to you by your Pacific Toyota dealers and the 2026 Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid, a no-compromise approach to electric vehicles offering the best in both worlds. Drive up to 72 kilometers on the battery side. That's enough to get you from downtown to the rink, grocery store, home to recharge. Regular plug in there. Don't need a special charger. Seamless transition from electric mode to gas engine. Combined range of 962 kilometers. No sacrifices on horsepower or style. This is a sleek, beautiful vehicle. Low, wide exterior. Sophisticated interior loaded with the tech that's easy to use. Plenty of room in the back for goalie gear and golf clubs. Plug-in recharge at home or at one of over 2,000 public charging stations in British Columbia. And you can lease the 2026 Praise Plug-in Hybrid SE from $109 weekly at 3.99% APR, 64 months with $3,300 down. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. As we welcome to the program Associate Editor of Canucks Army. He's your partner from time to time on Rinkwide Vancouver, and we love what Tyson Cole is doing post-game after every Vancouver Canucks contest with his Cole's notes. I mean, it was right there on it. See, hi, Tyson. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on, guys. Big fan of the show, and it's nice that familiar face on Rinkwide is here with me, too.
Yeah, and you've been doing great work on Canucks Army and for us with Rinkwide, so we wanted to bring you in. First of all, give him the Cole's notes from last night against Philadelphia.
Well, first off, Cole's notes, you're right. It was kind of sitting there on a silver platter, but you got to compete at Canucks Army with Paterson's Point and Wags Weekly, so had to come up with something myself. I honestly didn't have a lot to start the game. I mean, didn't really feel like the Canucks showed up until later in the second period. I don't know. They had one high danger chance, and I mean, you got to credit Tocchet. We saw it here in Vancouver. He likes to protect the guts of the ice, and that's exactly what he did in the first two periods.
Sekeres, Tyson, you wrote about him as well, and I can't help think that there's a bunch of Canucks fans going, man, this guy was available and could have helped. Trevor Zegras, is he? And he's big buddies with Quinn Hughes, I learned this week as well. Is Trevor Zegras one who got away?
I mean, absolutely. I wanted the Canucks to trade for him. I thought he was kind of exactly what they needed. They needed skill, and they didn't have a lot of it, and he was available. There wasn't a lot available this offseason, especially down the middle. And he went for a very low price, 2nd-round pick, 4th-round pick, Ryan Poehling. You don't think, would you have done that if it was Aatu Ratu, another young center? I probably would. Ratu's finding it hard to get in the lineup right now, and that was a low price to pay, and you probably don't make that move to get Evander Kane if you do so. So, watching him last night, he's on a wicked point streak and leads the Flyers in points. It's just a huge miss opportunity for the Canucks.
Thought he was dangerous, too. He only had an assist, but I just thought his transporting the puck and making things happen. And it was impossible to watch last night's game without watching it through that lens of, Rick Tocchet's now coaching on the other side. But I thought it was funny. The first goal, the game opening goal, drive to the corner, back to the point, a slap shot, guy goes to the front of the net, all of the Rick Tocchet staples basically rolled up in the one ball. And then the 2-0 goal where the 4 Canucks are standing around. You mentioned the gut to the ice. Tocchet probably was hey, I remember that team defending that way. But they had to do a better job. Carl Gunstrom just able to, whack away until he finally was able to put the puck in the net.
Yeah, it was vintage Canucks a little bit. They had that stretch there on the road trip where they didn't allow a ton of high danger chances. And then it just kind of seemed like they were a little slow, especially Zeev Buium. That was your guy. Yeah. You can't, no fault to him. I mean, he's still a 20-year-old, it's going to happen. Those growing pains are going to happen. But it wasn't very exciting by any means. The defense kind of showed, what they have been for most of the season. And, it was the end of the road trip, right? It was a long road trip, Christmas right around the corner. So maybe they didn't, have enough juice in the tank. I don't know. It just wasn't a great performance for the Canucks defensively.
And I think it's fair to say with Buium at 20, with Elias Paterson, I mean, really hasn't even played a full NHL season, right? Mm-hmm. And, of course, with the other young defensemen that they're going to play, Hoglander in particular, they're going to be nights like this.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
Tyson, this is part of the growing pains, I guess, Canucks fans are just going to have to stomach by playing, half your defense corps being so young and inexperienced.
Yeah, and I mean, let's go back to the Quinn Hughes when he first started, right? He was known as this offensive defenseman who kind of lacked in the defensive zone. Obviously, he grew up into being a better defensive defenseman, but it's going to happen. Like you said, Zeev Buium's only 20 years old. Elias Pettersson, I believe, is 21, and Tom Hollander's around the same range too. That's what you're icing. That's what you should expect from night in and night out. And honestly, that's not a bad thing. This team is supposed to be in the transitional period. You want your defensemen to go out there, make mistakes so they can learn from it and hopefully come out better on the other side.
Yeah, and especially if there are offensively inclined defensemen are going to help push the puck, transport the puck, gain that offensive zone, and create something offensively. I liked this from Cole's notes last night as well. Since the Hughes trade, the 5-on-5 scorers for the Vancouver Canucks, Liam Mogren step right up, 2 goals. Max Sasson step right up, 2 goals. Singles for Evander Kane, Kiefer Sherwood, David Kampf, Linus Karlsson, and Drew O'Connor. Who's missing from that list, Tyson? My goodness. There are some highly paid wingers in some profound slumps right now for Vancouver.
Yeah, and it's confusing. Because you watch the Canucks and their best shifts are from the bottom 6. It's not the top 6 guys. Jake DeBrusk isn't going right now. Besser isn't going. What is it, 1 goal in 18 games now? Connor Garland, he did score, but I believe it was an empty netter. So I didn't include that. But yeah, none of the big guys are going. And that kind of brings me to another point where you got to start making trades, I think. You got to start getting some of these more veteran players off the roster so then you can move these guys up, move the young guys up who are actually producing and see what you got in them. Because, sure, the road trip was nice. You get 4 out of 5 wins. That's great. And that pushes you kind of closer to the playoffs, but like, don't lose what this team is, right? Like where this team's going. They're going towards a retool hybrid, whatever they call it, whatever it is, because there's got 40 names for them at this point. But you have to see what you have in some players. And Nils Hoglander being out of the lineup, that's not a good thing either. He's only 25. He's making $3 million. Like, is that a contract that they're going to regret soon? You got to get some of these guys in. And then Paterson's coming back. Like, and don't you want to see Karamaki in the lineup? See what he can do. Like,
we talked about Lekramaki yesterday on the program. He had scored in 5 straight in Abbotsford, and you've got to be able to make some opportunity for him. You've already got a first-round pick invested in him, and he does stand as one of the guys who you anticipate will be here in the future when a brighter day comes. Jeff?
Well, I just want to go back to Hoglander for a sec, because I was willing to buy the explanation on Saturday. Adam Foote said back-to-back games, 3 and 4, coming off ankle surgery, thought it was too much. They sat him down, and maybe it's as simple as, hey, they beat the Bruins, come back with a winning lineup, but that was a coach's decision then against Philadelphia, a $3 million player who, let's be honest, 5 games, hasn't done much, but you give him a little bit of leeway coming off the injury here. But this is now 4 NHL head coaches for this player that don't see this guy as an absolute lock to be in the lineup every single night. What is Nils Hoglander's future, do you think, with the Vancouver Canucks, or is there one?
Yeah, I still think there is one, for sure. Because the 2 guys that they're likely going to move off, Sherwood and Kane, that obviously opens up a spot for Hoglander. But I don't know, like, I quite like what I'm seeing when he's out there. Like, he's so tenacious on the forecheck. Like, he's good along the walls. That's what I want. Like, he's a little powerhouse, even though he's not the tallest guy. Like, he'll disrupt the play and everything. And so to me, that's something you want in the lineup. But I don't understand how, maybe the coaches see it differently. And I mean, I'm not a coach, so obviously there's something I'm missing there. But I still think that you want a guy like that, because you put him higher in the lineup. You put him with Paterson last season toward the tail end, right before he got injured, and they were producing. They were the best line that they had, and they almost dragged them into the playoff race, right? So he has that in him. But it is definitely alarming that he has been through 4 head coaches and he hasn't become a mainstay necessarily.
I'm with you, JPat, in terms of completely understood what Foote was saying on the first scratch. A little more curious on the second
on his birthday,
scratch.
though.
I know, that was the other thing.
But the other thing,
put out the birthday post for him, and then here's the lineup. And
the other thing is that, so let's just play the game. All right, you want Hoglander in your lineup. Who's coming out? The guys that he's battling with. Ogren, Carlson, O'Connor.
You're not taking them out.
Like,
nope.
Sasson's in the center, but like those guys are producing right now. As you said earlier, it's not the bottom of the lineup that has failed this hockey club. We said the same things about Quinn Hughes. Quinn Hughes didn't fail the hockey club. The bottom 6 of their forward group, they've got lots of candidates. It's still kind of hard, I think, to figure out what is their optimal bottom 6. It's that top 6, but ultimately, they got to sort that out, and I just don't know how they go about making their top 6 a whole lot better.
So let's give him some time here. Like, this was a surgery injury, right? So it could well be that he just requires more time. I guess the good news is he doesn't kill you at a $3 million price tag going forward, because the cap is jumping so significantly. You're not entirely daunted by the salary, but boy, if he's not an every night player, that's a very expensive spare for you. And I don't know, Tyson, like for me, if you're engaged in a hybrid retool,
Can you define that for me?
I'm about to ask you our poll question asking just that, or if you even understand it. But if you're entering a hybrid retool with a mid-20s player that now a 4th coach, as Jeff notes, doesn't view as an every night regular, he's got to be available, right? If somebody is willing to take a shot on Nils Hoglander?
I guess so. And if I was another team, I would probably look into it, because of all the things I said before. Like, I quite like the player. He brings a lot of, the hard to play against kind of player in the offensive zone. And I don't, at this point, I think everybody should kind of be available with how the team's playing, especially like their top guys. Like, I thought about this during last night's game, like how many players on this team would you actually consider to be like a first line player on, a Stanley Cup contending team? Playoffs, sure, but Stanley Cup, like I found it hard to find more than one, like maybe Elias Pettersson, but we haven't seen him in some time. But they do have a lot of middle six wingers, right? And that's kind of where I see Nils Hoglander fitting in. And if you can get him, you can get a return on him with wanting to play the young guys, then yeah, if you can, why not?
It's a great question. Is Philip Hronek a top pair right side defenseman on a cup contender? I think he's pretty close, isn't he?
Yeah, I
like he's not a number one defenseman, but
yeah,
is he number two?
I think on a lot of teams he would be a pretty solid number two.
Yeah, I think that as well. And Philip Hronek's having a pretty darn good year.
He had a tough night in Philly, but he's allowed to because you're right. He's had a nice run here.
In a season where not a lot of Canucks are having great years, Philip Hronek, I think, is having a good one. Okay, Tyson, time to ask you the daily poll question here, and you've referenced it already. When you hear Patrick Allvin say, quote, retool it a little bit with a hybrid form, what is your reaction? Our options on the poll are like, dislike, want to puke, or don't understand. But feel free to go off the board here, my friend. It's Christmas, after all.
Can I go all of the above except for like? I don't understand what it means at all. If I'm guessing, I'm going to go with it's just saying retool without saying retool, because that's what they've taken the most flack for. The organization has over the last few years of, we're not rebuilding, we're retooling. So now we put a new word in front of it, and hopefully it's better received. I don't know what it means. Like, is it quicker? I have no idea.
I think we talked about this in the opening segment. I think it's their way of saying we're not taking it down to the studs for a rebuild, and we're feeling pretty excited about 4 straight wins, so maybe we can bounce right back.
But you have to be, like, if you look at the underlying numbers of that 4-game road trip, sure, it's great. You got 8 out of 10 points, but I wrote these stats down. Over those, they're dead last in 5v5 shot share, scoring chances, 3rd last in expected goals, 4th last in high danger chances, 5th last in shot attempts. Corsi, like, you're not that good.
All roads lead back. All roads lead back to the top of the lineup, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
And so I'm with you. Like, and you're giving offensive numbers there. They gave up 80-plus shots over the last 2 games as well. Like, Boston had 42 and Philly ended with 39. Like, again, not sustainable to think that you're going to have success if you're giving up 40 shots a night.
No, I don't think so. Lastly from me, Tyson, but we saw Rick Tocchet last night. Of course, we will see him at Rogers Arena a week today, December 30th. The Flyers are in town. What kind of reception do you think he'll get from the home faithful at Rogers Arena?
Well, when they do their tribute, normally you get, it's all good things that you see. So I'm expecting a good reaction, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a bad one because, like you guys had mentioned earlier, they gave him an offer he couldn't refuse and he refused it. Like, he didn't want to be here. Now, it's probably because he knew the writing was on the wall with Quinn Hughes and, all these other things. Couldn't coach Petey, didn't want to coach Petey, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, he left the team, gave up on the team, and now this is where they are. So I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't a good one, but I feel like fans will remember, hey, Jack Adams award-winning season, 2nd round of the playoffs, 1 goal within the Western Conference Finals. So I think they'll give Tocchet his flowers.
All right. I understand you're headed to visit some family over the holidays here. Not in on Rinkwide over the next couple of shows.
We'll
at Tyson _ I hope so. At Tyson _ Cole. Cole's notes post-game after every Vancouver Canucks game, and you can also find them at Canucks Army. Buddy, thank you for this. Merry Christmas. All right, travel safely. Look forward to catching up in 2026.
Thanks so much for having me, guys, and Merry Christmas to you too, and to all the listeners at S&P.
Sekeres and Price from the Historic Wall Center in the Pacific Toyota Dealer Studio, built by Arbor Lee. Cheer louder when you're rested. Book your staycation here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres and Price rates. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. So San Francisco beats Indianapolis 48-27 to end Week 16. Stay right in the thick of the NFC West race. More on that in a second. 49ers win, clinches playoff berths for Jacksonville, the Chargers, and Buffalo, meaning 10 of the 14 spots, Jeff, now accounted for in the postseason with 2 weeks remaining in the regular season. Quite a three-team derby, though, here in the NFC West. Is this fun or what? Week 17, Seattle at Carolina, where the Panthers are trying to win the NFC South. They can clinch with a win and a Tampa Bay loss at Miami. If not, that division will go down in the final week where the Panthers and Buccaneers play again. Just played. Seattle does not clinch the division with a win, as they still have to play San Francisco in Week 18. And they would lose a tiebreaker and the division if they lose that game in Santa Clara. Of course, they lost in Week 1 to the 49ers dramatically here at Lumen. The 49ers host the Bears. The Bears are playing for the number 1 seed, and they have not yet clinched the NFC North. So they do so with a win, playing to play for on both sides of that equation. Rams at Atlanta on Monday night. Falcons have nothing to play for. So Seattle 12-3, Rams and 49ers 11-4. It should be noted here, the Rams win a 3-way tiebreaker at 13-4. The Rams also win a head-to-head tiebreaker versus the Seahawks. So you're trying to avoid those scenarios if you're Seattle. If Seattle and San Francisco both win here this weekend, then their Week 18 showdown is for the division title, Jeff, and the number 1 seed in the NFC will likely be the Sunday night game.
Right, and we thought the stakes were high for the game on Thursday.
Unbelievable. Could have a bigger one here, although I couldn't possibly have a better one than what we saw on Thursday. And then how about this? There have been 5 occasions in NFL history that a division had 3 teams with 11-plus wins. We saw it last year in the NFC North with Green Bay, Detroit, and Minnesota. Previous to that, 2020, the AFC North. Then you got to go back to the mid-'80s when we were dealing with 5-team divisions here. 85, the AFC East. 84, the AFC West. The peculiarity, only 1 team from these mega divisions has ever made a Super Bowl. That was Dan Marino and the Miami Dolphins. And they lost the Super Bowl in 85 to the San Francisco 49ers coming off the 84 season. Joe Montana got his second Super Bowl ring. Final remaining NFC playoff spot outside of that South winner is Green Bay's if Detroit loses at Minnesota on Christmas Day or if the Packers beat Baltimore at Lambeau on Saturday. You've got the triple header Thursday on Christmas Day. Then you got 2 games on Saturday before the Sunday slate. A Packers win over the Ravens would also clinch the AFC North for Pittsburgh. And then that final AFC playoff spot, of course, outside of the North winner, is Houston's if they beat the Chargers at SoFi on Saturday afternoon, or if Jacksonville beats Indianapolis on Sunday. So, Jeff, there is a possibility that the entirety of the NFL playoff field is set with a week remaining on the schedule.
That's no fun.
Yeah, exactly. Can't have that. I'm rooting for whatever makes Week 18 significant in terms of playoff spots, not just positioning. 6 Seahawks make the Pro Bowl. That's tied for the most of any team with 3 others. Quarterback Sam Darnold, wide receiver Jackson Smith and Jigba. Wide receiver Rashid Shaheed, but return guy, and of course spent most of the year with New Orleans. Defensive lineman Leonard Williams and DeMarcus Lawrence, and corner Devin Witherspoon. He has made the Pro Bowl all 3 seasons he's been in the league. Somehow defensive tackle Byron Murphy and kicker Jason Myers missed out. And the 2 rookies, Nick Emanwari, Gray Zabel, the offensive lineman, they had cases too. So there's some 12s feeling a little burnt here. Not that the Pro Bowl game matters anymore, Jeff, but the designation.
You got the 6, though.
Yeah. And the NFL has come down hard on former Seahawks wide receiver and current Steeler DK Metcalf for throwing a punch at that fan in Detroit. 2-game suspension and it is being grieved. So we'll see. It may be reduced. But this in his contract from Ian Rappaport and the NFL Insiders, he not only voids the $45,000. He voids the rest of his salary for this season, but he voids $45 million potentially in future earnings. $25 million fully guaranteed in 2026, $20 million guaranteed in 2027. There are few crimes that leagues view as higher than physically accosting a fan. We saw that with Rick Rippon all those years ago. Remember that fan in Minnesota? Was it a 5-game suspension? It was a long one.
Yeah.
The two things that sports leagues drill into players: don't ever make physical contact with a fan, and of course, don't ever bet on your games. And
something about Detroit, though. Malice at the Palace.
Yeah, no.
A little different, but no, you're right. And I mean, I'd be shocked, and I know that there is due process. I'd be shocked if the league reduces the suspension this late in the season. But the guaranteed money. But apparently there's language in his contract.
Well, that's it.
About obviously conduct unbecoming of a professional athlete and his inability to perform his duties as a player because he's now suspended. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where this one goes.
Yeah,
that's a lot of dough.
And, of course, I'm with you in terms of the suspension. I mean, if spitting on a player, disgusting and despicable as that is a 1-game suspension, then physically punching a fan has to be a higher penalty. Football north of the border, BC Lions continue to make moves here, re-signing defensive lineman Nathan Sherry and releasing linebacker Josh Woods. We wondered about Woods yesterday, who was set to become a free agent in February and is now free to sign anywhere, after BC inked that deal with all-star linebacker Darnell Sankey, ex of the Montreal Alouettes, earlier this week. Woods never got fully back to being the player he was before that knee injury in 2024. Cherry, a Canadian rotational piece in that defensive line. So Lions still with 21 free agents, including the 2 offensive tackles, Terrell Broxton, Dejon Allen, running back James Butler, wide receiver Aiden Eberhardt, defensive tackle Jonah Tavai, linebacker Ben Hladek of Vernon, and of course the Uber veterans in the secondary, Gary Peters and TJ Lee. We'll see if there's anything else before the calendar year. As we have told you, teams tend to have a little bit of cap space left over at this time of year and apply it on signing bonuses, typically with Canadian players, Canadian special teamers. So we'll see if there's anything further coming. The Mariners at a bat, but I'm not sure it's the one that M's fans were going to get excited about. Outfielder first baseman Rob Refsnyder, who does crush left-handed pitching, but needs a platoon partner. Seattle already starting 3 right-handed hitting outfielders in J-Rod, Randy Arozarena, and Victor Robles. So observers waiting for another shoe to drop here. Jerry DiPoto called his shot last week, saying next 7 to 10 days we'll out of bat. I suppose they could platoon Refsnyder with Dominic Cazone at DH. But, of course, that's going to heap more offensive pressure on third base, second base, and the M's still haven't gotten their guy there, their bat there. That's the positions that they were looking for. And, Jeff, with tanking being such a hot topic here in Vancouver these days, the NBA is taking on tanking. Did you see this?
I didn't.
Board of Governors meeting this week about how to prevent tanking. Well, that was one of the items. ESPN's Shams Charania saying multiple ideas were proposed in a brainstorming session. They include limiting pick protection to either top 4 or 14 and higher. So they want teams to be susceptible to losing those mid to late lottery picks. No longer allowing a team to draft in the top 4 2 years in a row. That would be heavy-handed. Baseball has started doing this. You're not allowed to pick in the top 3 in baseball in consecutive years. And then the third one, how about this, Jeff? Locking lottery positions after March 1st. So basically, your last 6 weeks don't really matter.
Wow.
Like, if you're really trying to fail down the stretch, they ain't going to be having it. Now, these are just proposals.
But does that just put more emphasis on tanking?
Tanking until March 1st.
Exactly. Like, what does that look like?
Some really bad teams.
Oh,
That's
my goodness.
That's what that looks like. So we'll see if any of those get the green light.
They don't want to have a second in-season tournament?
I guess not. Results of yesterday's poll question. We asked you, are the Canucks better off without Rick Tocchet? This, of course, after the first of 2 games against Rick Tocchet and the Flyers here over the Christmas season. 59% said yes, Jeff. Jason, he didn't want to be here, so yes, they are better off. Reductionist, but I hear what you're saying, Jason. Brilliant in its simplicity. Brian says, nope, Canucks are a critical patient. Management cut out the heart, lungs, and brain, kept the cancer. And Steve said, better, no, better off, yes. Drawing the distinction. What says you?
Tocchet gets the first laugh. It's not necessarily the last laugh because, as you said, they're going to see him again here in a week's time. If a guy doesn't want to be here, you can't make him. They made him a
especially when he's out of contract.
They made him an offer he couldn't refuse, and he refused
it. Mm-hmm.
But in saying that, and he had knowledge from the inside, institutional knowledge, I probably saw this path coming for this hockey club and decided that pastures were greener or oranger elsewhere.
Believe it or not, I do not have an error or an omission from yesterday's program. I know, stunning, JPat. So we are going to thank you for connecting with the program and spending some time with us. Please do subscribe to our channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. It costs you nothing. Follow on social, X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time, weekdays. No more shows for the rest of the week. We will be back on Monday. And, of course, please do support the community sponsors we keep telling you about. And, Jeff, thanks for sitting in. Merry Christmas to you and the Paterson family.
Yeah, right back at you and to all of the Sekeres and Price viewers, listeners, followers, everybody in the S&P community.
And the Rinkwide community as well. Thank you for a great 2025, everybody. Keep it local.